Welcome back, American coin hunter. Imagine holding a tiny copper-colored coin in your hand, a simple 1-cent piece dated 1965. At first glance, it looks ordinary, almost boring, something people toss into drawers, jars, or even leave forgotten on the street. But the moment you truly understand what happened in the United States Mint during that year, this small coin transforms into one of the most mysterious and talked about pennies in American history, a coin surrounded by confusion, production chaos, hidden minting errors, and stories of collectors discovering life-changing money inside what they thought was loose change. This is not just a penny. This is a moment frozen in metal. The year 1965 sits at a turning point in American coinage history. The country was facing massive silver shortages, inflation fears, and public hoarding of coins. The U.S. Mint was under pressure like never before, and decisions made during this time created conditions where rare errors and transitional coins could exist, unnoticed, slipping into circulation and disappearing for decades before resurfacing with values that sound unbelievable today. When people hear rumors of a 1965 1-cent coin connected to values reaching into the hundreds of millions of dollars, they immediately think it must be fake or exaggerated. But seasoned numismatists know that the most valuable coins in history often come from chaotic years, exactly like 1965. To understand why this coin is so special, we have to slow down and step into the world of the 1960s. The Lincoln cent had already been in circulation for over half a century, since 1909, and by 1965 it was a daily part of American life. Millions were minted every year, and almost nobody paid attention to them. But behind the scenes, things were changing rapidly. Silver was removed from dimes and quarters in 1965, and the mint was experimenting with metals, compositions, and production methods. At the same time, demand for coins exploded. People were pulling silver coins out of circulation, and the mint struggled to keep up. This pressure led to rushed production, long hours, overloaded machinery, and mistakes that today separate a common penny worth 1 cent from a legendary error coin worth more than most houses, businesses, or even entire collections. The standard 1965 1-cent coin was struck in a bronze composition made of approximately 95% copper and 5% zinc and tin. This composition gave the coin its familiar warm brown or red color. When freshly minted, the weight of a normal 1965 cent is about 3.11 grams, and the diameter measures 19 millimeters. The edge is smooth, and the coin carries no mint mark, which itself is an important detail, because during this era, mint marks were intentionally removed from most coins to discourage collectors from hoarding new issues. The absence of a mint mark on a 1965 penny is normal, but it also creates confusion because it hides the exact facility where each coin was produced, adding another layer of mystery. When errors appear, the obverse design features Abraham Lincoln facing right, a portrait originally designed by Victor David Brenner. Lincoln's expression is calm, thoughtful, almost solemn, as if aware that his image would one day be connected to some of the most valuable coins ever produced. Above his head is the word liberty, and behind him the date 1965. In front of his face appears the motto, "In God We Trust," a phrase that became mandatory on U.S. coinage decades earlier, but continues to spark emotional and historical discussion among collectors. The reverse design shows the Lincoln Memorial, an architectural symbol that replaced the wheat ears in 1959. Inside the memorial, if you look closely with magnification, you can actually see a tiny statue of Lincoln seated inside, a detail so fine that it demonstrates the incredible engraving skill involved in producing such a small object. So far, everything sounds normal, but now we enter the territory where the 1965 penny becomes extraordinary. During times of extreme mint pressure, transitional errors and experimental strikes can occur. These are coins that do not match official records or were never supposed to exist. One of the most talked about possibilities connected to 1965 is off-metal errors, coins struck on the wrong planchet. Imagine a penny struck on a dime blank, or even on experimental alloy planchets left over from testing phases. These coins would weigh differently, feel different, and immediately stand out to anyone who knows what to look for. Another category is double die errors, where the design appears doubled, especially in the date or lettering. This happens when the die used to strike the coin was misaligned during its creation, resulting in a doubled image that appears clearly under magnification. Some 1965 cents show dramatic doubling, that has been authenticated and sold for significant amounts but the most explosive. Rumors and collector dreams revolve around transitional compositions because 1965 was a year of massive metal changes. Some collectors believe that extremely rare experimental scents may exist struck on planchets intended for other denominations or made with unusual alloy mixtures, possibly even including aluminum or other test metals. If such a coin were discovered, authenticated, and confirmed as unique or one of only a few known examples, its value would not be measured in thousands or millions, but in headlines, auction records, and museum-level significance. This is where stories of valuations reaching $235 million come from, not from ordinary circulated pennies, but from the hypothetical discovery of a singular, historically unique error coin, a one-of-a-kind artifact from one of the most chaotic years in U.S. mint history. When collectors talk about a 1965 penny being worth $235 million, they are not saying every penny from that year has that value. They are talking about the upper ceiling, the absolute maximum. A unique discovery could command in a private sale or institutional acquisition, similar to how the 1933 Double Eagle gold coin reached values exceeding $18 million due to its unique legal and historical status, or how the 1913 Liberty Head nickel became one of the most famous and valuable coins in the world, with only 5 known examples. Rarity plus story plus mystery equals unimaginable value, and the 1965 penny has the potential to check all those boxes under the right circumstances. Condition also plays a massive role. A 1965 penny preserved in perfect mint state red condition with no where full original luster and sharp details is already more desirable than a circulated example. But when you add a confirmed error, the value multiplies dramatically. Collectors examine weight under precise scales, check metal composition with XRF testing, look for magnetic response, inspect the edges for seams or signs of wrong planchets, and study the lettering under high magnification, looking for doubling cracks or die chips. Some errors, like broad strikes where the coin was struck without a collar, create a wider, thinner coin. Others, like clipped planchets, result in missing curved sections. Each of these errors tells a story of what went wrong in the mint that day and why the coin should not exist the way it does. The absence of a mint mark in 1965 makes authentication more complex because it removes one identifying feature, but it also adds intrigue because it forces experts to rely entirely on physical characteristics and metallurgical analysis rather than simple attribution. If a coin deviates significantly from known standards, it raises questions that lead to deeper investigation and sometimes to historic discoveries. There are collectors today who still search rolls of pennies, bank boxes, estate collections, and inherited jars, hoping that one day they will spot something unusual in a pile of brown copper discs. The thrill of discovery is real because history has proven again and again that rare coins are often found by ordinary people, not museums, not mints, but individuals paying attention. The story of coin collecting is full of moments where someone almost spent a fortune unknowingly, and the 1965 penny fits perfectly into this tradition. Imagine a single error cent escaping the mint unnoticed, circulating briefly before being pulled aside by someone who thought it looked strange, then sitting in a drawer for decades until modern testing revealed its true nature. This is not fantasy. It has happened before, and it can happen again. This is why people continue to talk about the 1965 penny with such excitement, because it represents possibility, the idea that something overlooked can change everything. When we continue deeper into the story of the 1965 1-cent coin, the conversation becomes even more intense, because this is where myths, rumors, documented discoveries, and unanswered questions all collide. In the world of coin collecting, many people assume that everything about U.S. coins is already known, cataloged, and settled, but that assumption is wrong. Numismatics is a living field. New varieties are discovered, old assumptions are challenged, and coins once considered ordinary suddenly become historic. The 1965 penny lives exactly in this uncertain space. And that is why part 2 of this story becomes even more fascinating than the beginning. One of the most important things to understand is how the United States Mint actually operated in 1965. During this period, the mint was producing coins at an extraordinary pace. Machinery was pushed to its limits. Dies were used longer than ideal, and quality control, while still present, was not as tight as in calmer years. This environment is perfect for errors to happen, and not just small minor errors, but dramatic ones that slip past inspectors because speed mattered more than perfection. When you hear collectors talk about wrong planchet strikes, die clashes, off-center strikes, and transitional errors, you must imagine a factory environment under pressure with thousands of blanks feeding into presses every hour. One mistake at the wrong moment can create a coin that should never exist. There are documented cases from the mid-1960s where cents were struck on planchets intended for foreign coins or other denominations. These planchets sometimes ended up mixed into cent blank bins accidentally. If a cent die strikes one of these blanks, the result is a coin with the wrong weight, wrong thickness, and sometimes even a different color. These coins immediately feel strange in the hand. They may ring differently when dropped, and they often confuse people who are not familiar with error coins, but to a trained collector, they are gold literally and figuratively. The moment such a coin is authenticated, its value skyrockets because it represents a documented failure in the minting process, and collectors prize these failures more than perfection. Another layer of mystery involves experimental metals. During the 1960s, the mint explored alternatives to copper because of rising costs and supply concerns, although aluminum cents are famously associated with the early 1970s experiments. It is believed that earlier testing phases occurred quietly, without public release. If even a single 1965 cent were struck on an experimental aluminum or composite planchet and somehow escaped destruction, it would instantly become one of the most important coins in existence. Aluminum cents are incredibly light, often weighing around 1 gram compared to the standard 3.11 grams. If such a coin surfaced dated 1965, it would shock the numismatic world because it would rewrite known timelines and prove that experimentation happened earlier than officially acknowledged. This is the type of discovery that justifies valuations in the hundreds of millions because it is not just a coin, it is evidence. History frozen in metal. Double die errors from 1965 also deserve special attention because many people misunderstand how valuable true double dies can be. This is not the same as machine doubling, which is common and usually worthless. A true double die occurs during the creation of the die itself, when the hub impresses the design more than once at slightly different angles. This creates a doubled image that is raised and rounded, not flat or shelf-like. On a 1965 cent, a true double die might show strong doubling on the date, the word liberty, or the motto "In God We Trust." Under magnification, these features look like two distinct impressions, slightly offset from each other. Such coins are scarce, and when they are dramatic, they become extremely desirable. High-grade examples of strong double die cents from other years have sold for tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, and a unique or previously unknown double die variety from 1965 could easily command far more, especially if discovered in exceptional condition. A condition of the coin cannot be overstated in importance. Collectors use grading scales that range from poor all the way to mint state 70, a perfect coin with no post-production flaws. A 1965 penny preserved in mint state red condition with full original luster is already uncommon because most pennies entered circulation immediately and suffered wear, exposure, and oxidation over decades. Copper is reactive and sensitive to environment, so finding a bright red example untouched by time is difficult. Finding one with a major error is exponentially harder. This is why top population coins command extraordinary premiums. When supply is tiny and demand is global, prices can move beyond logic into the realm of prestige. Ownership. The Lincoln Memorial design itself adds another interesting detail. Because of the fine lines and architectural elements, any error affecting this area becomes visually striking. Die cracks running through the columns, missing design elements, weak strikes where details fade, or clash marks where parts of the obverse design appear faintly on the reverse. All of these features tell a story of the minting process going wrong at a specific moment in time. Some collectors specialize exclusively in die varieties and spend years mapping cracks, chips, and progressions through different stages. If a 1965 cent showed a unique and extreme die failure never before recorded, it would attract serious scholarly attention, not just collector interest. There is also the human factor behind coin values. People are not just buying metal, they are buying stories. When a coin is tied to a pivotal historical year, like 1965, when America was undergoing social, economic, and monetary change, the narrative becomes powerful. Collectors, museums, and wealthy individuals want to own pieces of that story, and if The coin is unique or nearly unique. Competition can drive prices into the stratosphere. This is how a theoretical value, like $235 million, is discussed not as a guaranteed price, but as a reflection of what could happen if the right coin meets the right buyer under the right circumstances. History shows that this is not impossible. It has already happened with other legendary coins. Many collectors today still actively search 1965 cents because they know the door is not closed. Rolls from banks, estate sales, inherited collections, flea markets, and old jars are still being examined because discovery does not end when minting stops. It continues as long as coins exist in the world. This ongoing search keeps the story alive and fuels the imagination of new collectors entering the hobby. People in different countries, including Pakistan, India, Europe, and the Middle East, now collect American coins, and sometimes these coins traveled overseas decades ago, creating new opportunities for rediscovery far from where they were minted. Another overlooked aspect is professional authentication. Without it, even the rarest coin is just a curiosity. Grading services use advanced technology, including X-ray fluorescence microscopy and precision scales, to confirm metal composition and authenticity. Once a coin is certified, it enters the official record and its story becomes permanent. This moment is often when values explode because uncertainty disappears and confidence enters the market. A certified unique 1965 error cent would immediately become a reference point discussed in books, videos, auctions, and academic papers. The psychological impact of such discoveries is huge. Stories spread fast online and inspire thousands of people to check their change again. This cycle repeats generation after generation because hope is powerful and coin collecting thrives on the idea that history is still waiting to be found. The 1965 1-cent coin represents that hope more than most because it comes from a year of chaos, change, and transition. Every error tells us that even institutions as large as the U.S. Mint are run by humans and machines capable of mistakes, and those mistakes become treasures decades later. As we move even further into the depth of the 1965 1-cent story, Part 3 becomes less about theory and more about the silent journey these coins have taken over nearly 6 decades, because a coin's life does not end when it leaves the mint. In fact, that is where its true story begins. Once released into circulation, a penny passes through countless hands, pockets, cash registers, banks, wallets, and collections, and every stop along the way adds another layer to its history. Most 1965 pennies lived ordinary lives, worn down by time, losing detail, turning brown or dark red, but a tiny number followed a very different path, remaining hidden, protected, or simply overlooked. And it is these survivors that fuel today's obsession with the year 1965. One important reality many people do not realize is that the United States Mint never intended coins to be collected in the condition they leave the press circulation. Was the goal, not preservation. So when a coin survives decades without where it is already an anomaly, and when it survives with an error, it becomes extraordinary. Some collectors in the 1960s did save rolls of pennies hoping they might be worth something one day. But because 1965 coins had no mint marks, many collectors ignored them, believing they would never be special. This widespread belief ironically increased the chances that rare error coins were never carefully examined at the time, allowing them to blend into the mass unnoticed. The lack of mint marks during 1965 creates a unique challenge and opportunity because it removed one of the easiest identification tools collectors rely on. Instead, attention shifts to physical evidence: weight, thickness, color, strike, quality, and microscopic details. This makes every 1965 penny a small investigation, especially when something looks off: a slightly different color, a softer strike, unusual spacing in letters or numbers, a rim that looks too wide or too thin. These subtle clues can be the difference between a common coin and a 6 or 7 figure discovery. And sometimes even more. As copper ages, it changes color and surface texture. This natural process can hide or reveal errors depending on conditions. A coin stored in a dry, stable environment may retain sharp details and original luster, while one exposed to moisture, heat, or chemicals may corrode or darken, obscuring key features. This is why professional conservation and authentication matters so much, because cleaning a coin incorrectly can destroy its value forever. Collectors are taught never to clean coins because original surfaces are critical evidence of authenticity and originality. A rare 1965 error penny cleaned by mistake could lose most of its market appeal, even if the error itself remains. Stories circulate within the collecting community about people who unknowingly spent rare coins or sold them cheaply because they did not understand what they had. These stories are not myths, they are documented realities. A man once bought a cup of coffee with a coin later valued at thousands. Another used a rare penny as a lucky charm drilled with a hole, ruining its collector value. These cautionary tales add urgency to the search and remind collectors that knowledge is as valuable as luck when it comes to finding something extraordinary. When discussing market value, especially extreme numbers like $235 million, it is important to understand how such figures are formed. They are not random. They come from comparing rarity, historical importance, demand, and precedent. When a coin is truly unique, meaning no other confirmed examples exist, its value is not constrained by price guides. It becomes whatever someone is willing to pay, and wealthy collectors, institutions, and museums often compete for ownership because owning a unique artifact confers status, influence, and legacy. The buyer is not just purchasing a coin, but securing a permanent place in numismatic history. This is why prices can climb far beyond intrinsic metal value or even typical collector logic. Another element driving value is documentation. If a hypothetical unique 1965 era penny were discovered today, its journey would be carefully recorded from the moment of discovery through authentication, grading, and publication. Experts would analyze die characteristics, metal composition, and production context. Research papers would be written, and the coin would be photographed, studied, and compared against mint archives. This documentation transforms a single object into a reference standard for future research, increasing its importance and value even further. Once a coin enters major auction catalogs and scholarly works, its legitimacy and desirability multiply. International interest also plays a growing role. American coins are collected worldwide, and rare U.S. coins often find buyers outside the United States. Collectors from Asia, Europe, and the Middle East actively compete at major auctions and are willing to pay record prices for iconic pieces. The Lincoln cent is one of the most recognizable coin designs in the world, and a legendary 1965 example would attract global attention. This international demand expands the pool of potential buyers, which in turn drives prices higher. Because competition is no longer local or national, it becomes global. Technology has changed the search as well. Modern digital microscopes, affordable precision scales, and online databases allow everyday collectors to examine coins with tools once reserved for professionals. Social media and video platforms spread discoveries instantly. A single video showing an unusual 1965 penny can reach millions overnight, sparking renewed interest and sometimes uncovering similar examples that had been sitting unnoticed for years. This collective effort accelerates discovery and keeps older series like the Lincoln cent constantly relevant in the modern age. Yet, despite all this technology, there is still a strong emotional element to the 1965 penny. The idea that something so small, common, and overlooked could be worth more than gold, diamonds, or real estate resonates deeply with people. It challenges assumptions about value and reminds us that worth is often defined by context, history, and scarcity, not size or appearance. This emotional connection is why people keep searching jars of coins passed down from parents and grandparents, because those coins carry memories as well as potential treasury. As Part 3 unfolds, the image of the 1965 1-cent coin becomes clearer. It is not just an object, but a symbol of transition, uncertainty, and hidden potential. Born in a year of monetary change, produced under pressure, scattered across the world, and slowly rediscovered through patience, curiosity, and knowledge, its rumored value at the highest level represents not just money, but the ultimate reward for understanding history, paying attention to detail, and respecting the quiet power of small things. And with millions of 1965 pennies still in existence, somewhere the story remains alive, waiting for the next chapter to be written by the person who looks just a little closer than everyone else. As the story moves into Part 4, the focus shifts toward the deeper technical mysteries and the psychological pull that the 1965 1-cent coin has on collectors, because by this stage it is no longer just about metal errors or rarity. It becomes about obsession, patience, and the way time transforms ordinary objects into legendary artifacts. Every serious collector knows that the most valuable coins are often the ones that challenge established knowledge, and the 1965 penny does exactly that because It sits in a gray zone between what is officially documented and what may still be hidden. One of the most fascinating technical discussions around the 1965 cent involves die life and die deterioration. During that year, the mint extended die usage far beyond normal limits to meet demand. Worn dies produce weak details, distorted lettering, and sometimes ghost-like impressions that look almost supernatural under magnification. While many worn die coins are considered common, some extreme cases cross into the realm of collectible errors, especially when they show unusual effects like flow lines rippling across the surface or partially missing design elements. When such a coin is combined with pristine surfaces and original color, it becomes a snapshot of mint stress frozen in time, and advanced collectors value these pieces because they tell a story machines normally try to hide. There is also the subject of mule coins. A mule is created when mismatched dies are paired together, such as an obverse intended for one year or denomination combined with a reverse intended for another. These are extremely rare and usually accidental. If a 1965 cent mule were ever confirmed, it would instantly become one of the most important Lincoln cents ever known because it would demonstrate a breakdown in mint die management during a sensitive transitional year. Mule coins from other series have sold for enormous prices and are among the most studied pieces in numismatics. A confirmed 1965 cent mule would ignite global interest and reset expectations for what this year can produce. Another layer of intrigue comes from edge anomalies. While pennies normally have plain smooth edges, some errors show irregular rims, partial collars, or even signs of multiple strikes. These coins may appear thicker, thinner, or uneven around the circumference, indicating that something went wrong during the striking process. These errors are often overlooked by casual observers, but stand out dramatically to trained eyes. Because the edge is one of the most consistent features in coin production, any deviation suggests a significant mechanical error and adds to the coin's desirability, especially when the rest of the design remains sharp and undamaged. The psychology of the hunt cannot be separated from the value discussion. Collectors spend countless hours searching, not because they expect to become rich overnight, but because the act of searching connects them to history and possibility. The 1965 penny represents a year that most people overlook precisely because it lacks a mint mark and seems ordinary. This paradox makes it more attractive because it challenges assumptions and rewards attention to detail. Collectors often say the best coins hide in plain sight, and the 1965 cent is a perfect example of that philosophy. When people hear about extreme valuations like $235 million, they sometimes dismiss them as unrealistic, but in the world of unique artifacts, value is shaped by desire, narrative, and exclusivity. If there is only one confirmed example of a historically significant error from a pivotal year, price becomes secondary to ownership. Collectors and institutions understand that such opportunities do not repeat. Once a unique coin enters a permanent collection or museum, it may never appear on the market again, and that urgency drives extraordinary offers behind closed doors. Far from public auction headlines, auction history shows that record-breaking prices often surprise even experts. Coins sell for far more than pre-sale estimates because bidders act emotionally as well as rationally. When a piece represents the pinnacle of a series or the missing link in a historical timeline, logic bends, prestige, legacy, and competition take over, and the final hammer price becomes a statement rather than a calculation. The theoretical value attached to a legendary 1965 cent reflects this phenomenon. It is not about metal or denomination, it is about rewriting what is possible. Within the Lincoln Cent series, another important factor is generational change. Younger collectors are entering the hobby through online content, videos, and social media. Many of them are drawn to stories of dramatic discoveries and life-changing finds. The 1965 penny fits perfectly into this narrative because it connects everyday life with extraordinary outcomes. This new wave of collectors increases demand for iconic pieces and keeps older series relevant, ensuring that if a major discovery occurs, there will be no shortage of interested buyers ready to compete at the highest levels. There is also a cultural element. Pennies themselves have become symbolic as their purchasing power declined. Discussions about eliminating the 1-cent coin entirely have surfaced multiple times. This makes the idea of a penny worth millions even more powerful. It transforms something considered obsolete into something priceless, reinforcing the notion that value is not fixed but shaped by context, history, and Rarity, a 1965 penny discovered today as a legendary error, would immediately become a symbol of irony and fascination across media platforms as time continues to pass. The chances of discovering pristine examples decrease because copper continues to age. Collections are dispersed, mishandled, or lost, and fewer people pay attention to small change. This shrinking pool of potential discoveries increases the significance of any major find because it may truly be the last of its kind. This scarcity fuels urgency among collectors who understand that every year that passes makes the unknown even more valuable. Part 4 ultimately reinforces the idea that the 1965 1-cent coin exists at the intersection of science, history, psychology, and chance. It is studied under microscopes, debated in forums, dreamed about in late-night searches, and passed silently through generations of hands. Its rumored top-end value is not a promise, but a reflection of what happens when rarity meets story and human desire. And as long as even one unanswered question remains about what left the mint in 1965, the penny from that year will continue to command attention, curiosity, and respect far beyond its humble face value, waiting patiently for the moment when another hidden truth finally comes to light. As Part 5 unfolds, the attention turns toward legacy, because by now the 1965 1-cent coin is no longer just a subject of collecting. It becomes a symbol of how history chooses unlikely objects to carry enormous meaning. Every generation leaves behind physical traces, and coins are among the most honest of those traces because they are produced in massive numbers, yet altered by circumstances beyond intention. When collectors study a 1965 penny, they are not just examining copper, they are reading a silent record of economic pressure, political decisions, industrial limitations, and human error, all pressed into a disc smaller than a fingertip. Of the most compelling aspects of the 1965 cent is how it bridges eras. It stands between the traditional copper-dominated coinage of earlier decades and the experimental mindset that followed as metal prices rose and minting philosophies changed. This position makes it historically sensitive because transitional periods always produce anomalies. Historians see this pattern repeatedly, whether in currency, art, or technology. Moments of change generate unexpected outcomes, and those outcomes later become artifacts of immense importance. The 1965 penny captures that moment perfectly, quietly marking the end of an old system and the uncertainty of what came next. Private collectors who specialize in Lincoln cents often describe a feeling of reverence when handling high-grade or unusual examples from this year, because they understand that so much was happening behind the scenes, even though the coin itself looks unchanged from the outside. This contrast between appearance and reality adds emotional weight. A normal-looking penny hiding a dramatic story mirrors the broader truth that history often moves invisibly beneath everyday life and only later reveals its consequences. Collections are passed down through families. Many 1965 pennies remain untouched in inherited jars, boxes, or envelopes, sometimes labeled simply as old coins without any understanding of what might be inside. These collections represent time capsules frozen decades ago, and occasionally they yield surprises when opened by someone curious enough to look closely. Stories continue to emerge of heirs discovering rare coins they never knew existed, and while most finds are modest, the possibility of something extraordinary keeps hope alive. This is why the 1965 penny remains a target year for searchers, because it has not been fully exhausted by collectors the way some heavily publicized years have been. A conversation around ultimate value also evolves here, because value is not static, it grows as understanding deepens. If new archival evidence surfaced showing undocumented experiments or production anomalies in 1965, it would instantly elevate the importance of any related coin's documentation and context are powerful forces in numismatics. A coin once considered an oddity can become a cornerstone of history when new information comes to light, and because not all mint records from that era are complete, the door remains open for reinterpretation and discovery. The influence of museums and institutional collectors also shapes the future of the 1965 penny. Major museums often seek coins that represent turning points rather than perfection. A unique error cent from 1965 would perfectly fit this mission because it illustrates a moment of systemic stress and adaptation. Institutions compete quietly and strategically for such pieces, knowing that they may never have another opportunity to acquire one. This behind-the-scenes competition can drive values far beyond public expectations because institutions think in terms of decades and legacy rather than short-term investment. There is also an ethical dimension to consider when dealing with potential discoveries. Transparency, honesty, and proper attribution matter because the numismatic community relies on trust. When a coin is claimed to be unique or historically significant, it must withstand intense scrutiny and skepticism. This rigorous process protects the integrity of the field and ensures that when something truly extraordinary is confirmed, its value is unquestionable. The hypothetical $235 million valuation reflects not hype, but the outcome of passing through this crucible of expert examination. Consensus and acceptance. Time itself continues to shape the story. Copper surfaces, mellow tones deepen, and microscopic features soften, but this natural aging also adds character. Collectors appreciate originality even when it shows the passage of years. A 1965 penny that retains untouched surfaces, even if no longer bright red, still carries authenticity, and authenticity is often more important than brilliance. Originality tells experts that the coin has not been altered, manipulated, or cleaned, preserving the evidence needed to understand its origin and journey. Public fascination with rare pennies often spikes during economic uncertainty because people are drawn to the idea that hidden value might exist within what they already own. This psychological pattern reinforces interest in years like 1965, when production chaos increases the chance of anomalies. Media stories about rare pennies found in pocket change resonate because they suggest that opportunity can appear anywhere without warning. The 1965 cent sits at the heart of this narrative because it is common enough to be familiar, yet mysterious enough to feel promising. As part 5 settles, the picture becomes richer and more nuanced. The 1965 1-cent coin is not defined by a single known variety or a single famous specimen. It is defined by potential, by the unanswered questions that still surround it, and by the way it invites people to look closer, think deeper, and question assumptions. Its rumored extreme value is a reflection of everything it represents: change, uncertainty, rarity, and the human desire to find meaning in small, overlooked things. And as long as there are coins left unexamined and stories left untold, the 1965 penny will continue to occupy a unique place in the imagination of collectors, standing quietly between the ordinary and the extraordinary, waiting for the moment when its full story is finally revealed. As Part 6 begins, the story of the 1965 1-cent coin grows even quieter and at the same time more powerful, because this is where time, patience, and belief come together. Most legendary coins were not recognized immediately. They waited, sometimes for decades, until knowledge, technology, and curiosity finally aligned. The 1965 penny is still waiting in many ways, because despite years of searching, discussion, and speculation, no single discovery has yet closed the book on what that year truly produced. And that open ending is exactly what gives this coin its enduring strength. One of the most overlooked elements in this discussion is survival rate. Billions of cents were minted, but survival in meaningful condition is much lower. Copper corrodes, reacts, and degrades, especially when exposed to moisture, chemicals, or improper storage. Many 1965 pennies were melted, damaged, or destroyed over the years, and countless others were cleaned without understanding the consequences. Each year that passes reduces the pool of untouched original examples, making any high-grade or unusual survivor increasingly important. Scarcity is not only about how many were made, but how many still exist in a state that allows their story to be read accurately. This slow disappearance changes market psychology. Collectors understand that opportunities shrink with time, and when something rare finally appears, it may represent the last realistic chance to acquire it. This awareness creates urgency that cannot be replicated later. Because once a unique coin enters a long-term collection or museum, it effectively leaves the market forever. The possibility that a legendary 1965 error cent could be discovered and then vanish from public view is part of what drives extreme hypothetical valuations, because buyers know they may never see another chance. The role of chance in discovery cannot be overstated. Some people search their entire lives and never find anything extraordinary, while others stumble across history accidentally. This randomness adds to the mystique of the 1965 penny because it suggests that discovery is not limited to experts alone. Knowledge helps, but luck still plays a role. Stories of rare coins found by children homeowners or people cleaning out old properties remind everyone that history does not choose its discoverers carefully, it simply waits to be noticed. The emotional reaction to discovery is another powerful factor. Imagine realizing that a small brown penny in your hand might represent a missing chapter of American mint history. The shock, disbelief, excitement, and fear of being wrong all arrive at once. This emotional intensity is part of what makes legendary coins so compelling. They are not just valuable, they are transformative experiences for the people who find them. This emotional dimension carries into the marketplace because buyers sense the depth of the story behind the object, and that depth adds intangible value beyond any number written on paper. Another important aspect is comparison. History teaches us that coins once dismissed as myths later became reality. For years, collectors doubted the existence of certain rare varieties until one finally surfaced, changing everything. The 1965 penny occupies a similar space today, where rumors and theories persist without definitive resolution, but history suggests that skepticism does not equal impossibility. It simply reflects the absence of evidence. So far, an absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. This principle keeps serious researchers engaged and prevents the topic from fading away. Advanced metallurgical testing continues to improve, allowing experts to analyze coins with unprecedented precision. Techniques like X-ray fluorescence and microscopic surface analysis can reveal alloy composition, stress patterns, and production anomalies invisible to the naked eye. As technology advances, coins previously examined decades ago may yield new information when reanalyzed. This means that even known 1965 cents could still surprise experts under modern equipment, adding another layer of uncertainty and potential discovery to the story. There is also a philosophical element that draws people to the 1965 penny. The idea that value is hidden and not always obvious resonates deeply in human culture. It mirrors broader life lessons about overlooked potential and delayed recognition. The penny becomes a metaphor as much as a collectible, symbolizing how something small, dismissed, and ignored can later be understood as extraordinary. This symbolism strengthens its cultural appeal and ensures that interest extends beyond hardcore numismatists to the general public. Economic factors also play a role. When traditional investments feel unstable, people often turn to tangible assets with historical significance. Rare coins fit this role perfectly because they combine material existence with narrative value. A hypothetical unique 1965 penny would be immune to many market fluctuations because its worth would be anchored in singularity rather than commodity pricing. This resilience makes extreme valuations more plausible because buyers are not purchasing copper, they are purchasing certainty of rarity. Part 6 continues. The sense emerges that the 1965 1-cent coin is less about answers and more about endurance. It endures in circulation, in collections, in conversations, and in imagination. It survives because it refuses to be fully understood or closed off. Every unanswered question keeps it alive. Every rumor fuels another search. Every discussion inspires another person to look more closely at what they already own. This ongoing cycle is rare and valuable in itself. In the end, Part 6 reinforces a quiet truth. The greatest treasures often announce themselves slowly. If at all, the 1965 penny does not demand attention through beauty or precious metal. It whispers through inconsistency, possibility, and silence its potential value at the highest extreme. Reflects not hype, but patience. The patience of history waiting for recognition and the patience of collectors willing to listen closely enough to hear what a small, unassuming coin from a chaotic year might still have to say.